Hello everyone, it's Stefano here. Today I'm going to introduce you to the fantastic world of the 3D space in After Effects. And for that, we're going to be using first photos. So the first thing we can do is to import some pictures here in the project area. And we can do that by simply dragging our pictures in the project area, or we can um, import pictures from file, import files, or we can double click the project area and then import our file. So let's simply drag the photo, our pictures in the project area, and then now we can create a new composition. So composition, new composition, let's call it 3D space, um, HD TV 720, black background color, 5-second animation. Okay, so let's drag one of these photos in the, I don't know, this one, in our preview window. So a photo can be used as a solid, as we saw last time. So we can move it in our space. We can scale it down or scale it up. We can rotate the photo. We can animate the photo and so on. Um, but we're going to be using photo now to introduce the 3D space in After Effects. And for that, we have to select the photo here. Then there is a button in the layer area called 3D layer. So if we check it, now our photo has turned from 2D to 3D. And so if we rotate the photo now and we press R, now we see that we don't have only one parameter to change, but instead we have a bunch of options. So we can rotate our photo around the X, Y, and Z axis. So for example, we take the X-axis, we are rotating the photo, Y-axis, here's our photo, and then Z-axis. So X, Y, Z. And now we can do a bunch of things with this 3D space. To understand better how it works, let's drag one more photo in our preview area. We have to make sure to make it 3D. So we check the 3D button, and now we can move also in space our photo. We can either uh, click P for position and then we move our photo, or if we hover on the 3 axis, we can drag our picture along the 3 different axes and Z as well. So now we are in 3D space. So we have to it's important to understand differences between 2D and 3D space, also in terms of the order of the layer here. So now this photo is on the foreground, whereas the other photo is on the background, right? But in our layer area, the photo on the background is on top, and usually in Photoshop or Illustrator, whatever is at the top stays at the top. In this case, no. If we change the order, we are not changing the visibility order in the layer because we are in 3D space. And to better visualize the 3D space, we can switch from the active camera view, which is this one, to custom view. So active camera to custom view 1. Now there are different options to navigate the space here. We can go to the top to this tool here, unified camera tool, and here we have different options for moving our point of view. Or we can simply press C in our keyboard, C as camera, and we can switch between the different options. We have the rotate tool, we have the pan tool, and we finally have the zoom tool, zoom in, zoom out. If we want to go back to our active camera, we can either switch here to the active camera, or we can press escape, and we always go back. We switch between the two, this custom view and active camera. Okay, so let's drag a couple more photos here. We have to make sure to make them 3D. Here, make 3D. We can move these photos to the foreground or background, and in order to move faster, we can hold here on the axis Z, and at the same time pressing Shift. Now we're moving faster here in space. Alright, let's move this one a little bit to the background. That. Okay, now we have our photos in space. So let's say now we want to navigate through these photos and create an animation for that. In order to do that, we have to introduce a new object in our composition, which is a camera. So I go through layer, new camera, and here we can set different options for our camera. Usually what's important for us is just the focal length, and then right now it's 50 millimeters. We can switch it to 35 millimeters, which is a regular camera, and then we can press OK. So now we have our camera here in the layer area, and so we can do a bunch of things with this camera. We can actually animate the camera for creating our composition. We can open up here the options for the camera, and we have the transform options, in which we can animate the position, and then we have the camera options with other options, and there is also the depth of field. We can for now switch it off and we can play around the depth of field in a second. So right now let's animate the position of our camera. Let's say we want to fly through our photos in the 3D space. So what we want to do is something like that. If we press C as camera, we have our tool for moving the space. If we press V, we go back to our selection tool, V. Now we can still change. We can select a photo, distribute them, zoom in, zoom out, and so on. So what we want to do, we press C for we want to create something like that, which we fly through our photo. So let's animate the camera for doing that. So if we press ESC, we always go back to our custom view. We select the camera. You can actually see the camera here. And here again we can change the position of the camera. What we want to do is to move the camera and create an animation like that. We press ESC and we go back to our active camera view. So let's animate the position. As we know, we have to make sure that we set our keyframe. Right now I want to start at 0.0. I check the stopwatch for just the position. Then I move my timeline marker to, let's say, 2 seconds, and then now I can move my camera. Let's switch to C, zoom in, tool, right here. So now I'll go back, and that's my animation. I can shrink down my preview area. I press 0 for running the preview, and that's my animation. It's a little bit too fast, so we can actually drag our keyframe. So let's say 2 seconds. We press 0 for loading the frames, and here it's our animation. Okay, very good. So we can also, as we said, play with the option for the camera of depth of field. Let's see how it works. We can open up the camera options in the layer field, turn on the depth of field options, and to make it more extreme, we can open up the aperture. So now we are starting to see how the depth of field works. We can also change the focus distance. Right now the focus is on our photo on the foreground, but if we increase the distance, we are switching now to the second photo, third one right now, and then finally the last one. So we can also we can animate this focus distance. Let's delete the animation of the position of the camera. So we select both the keyframes, we press delete, and we are deleting the position. So let's animate both the position and the focus distance of our camera. So let's move the camera to something like that. Can zoom in a bit. Now this is our first position, and then I also want to animate the depth of field. You can open up the camera options. Let's change the focus distance. Let's adjust it till we reach a good result. Should be about right. We check the focus distance, then we move our timeline to something more than 2 seconds. Then we move back camera, something like that. We have our position keyframe done. Now we have to set the focus distance for the foreground image. Alright, let's check it. Should be about right. We can shrink down the working area, press 0. And here is our animation. Very good, very effective. So now that we are in the 3D area, we can see how we can work in 3D space, not only with photos, but also with shapes. So let's see how we can animate shapes like lines and other shapes in 3D. And we are also adding some light in our composition. Okay, so now let's say we want to create an animation like this one here. So we have 3 stripes that move in the 3D space. We have also the camera that slightly moves, and then some light effects that we can add to the scene as well. So let's try to create something like that. Let's go back to After Effects and create a new composition. So new composition. Let's call it 3 stripes. We can select the color of the background. Let's make it something bluish, like that. Duration 5 seconds. That's fine. Okay. So we first want to create one of those stripes and animate it. So let's create a new layer. New solid. Let's select the color, magenta light color, and then we want it to be 1280 pixels width large, so the width should be 1280, and the height we want it to be much smaller. So for setting the width, we can simply check main composition size, and then we can simply change the height, something like 50 pixels should be fine. Okay, and here it is. So now what we want to do is to first animate this strip here, and we can do that by animating a mask. So let's first create a mask. With the rectangle tool, we create a mask, and then what we want to animate is the path of the mask. So let's first check the first position of this path. Then we can click on the solid here, and then now if we go back to the selection tool, we are now able to change the shape of this mask. So our mouse cursor turns from white to black, and now if we click on it and hold shift, we are moving our mask, and we want it to be right at the end. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go back. We have to first mark our keyframe with a stopwatch. Then we move on time, let's say 1 second, and then we click on the solid layer, we click on the edge, we hold shift, and then we move our mask to the end. And now we have our keyframe. So now we should have our mask animated. We can shrink down the working area. We can press 0 for running the preview, and here it's our nice strip animated. Okay, so now if we go back to our animation, we have 3 stripes that are doing the same animation, right? So let's do that. We can simply duplicate the layer. So Control D, let's duplicate, Control D. I'm duplicating the layer. If I go to Layer, Solid Settings, we can change the color. Let's make it a little bit lighter. Okay, then we can change the position here in space. So we can move it, hold Shift, okay. We can duplicate again the layer, Control D. We can change the position space and the color as well. Layer, solid settings, let's make it darker. Okay. So now if we load again our animation, we have our 3 nice stripes that run together at the same time. But we want to add some delay in time on these 3 stripes, so we can simply drag our timeline here, add some space, let's run again, and now we have our 3 stripes. We can extend a little bit. Alright, now it's looking good, but not as good as we want, because one thing we can add is the effect on the temporal keyframes, as we learned a couple of workshops ago, the easy ease option, which is always effective. So let's open up our animation here. We can select all the keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Now the animation is actually looking better. Okay, so now we have basically everything that's needed to create our animation in space, because our main piece of composition is just the animation of these 3 stripes. So now we have to create a pre-composition. So let's select the 3 of them, right click, pre-compose. We can give a name to this grease composition stripes. Okay, now we have our three stripes. Let's go to the 3D space. So let's check this 3D space button here. Now we are in 3D. As we can see, 3D. Now we can also view the 3D space by switching from the active camera to the custom view. And here it's our 3D space. Now if we run the animation, these are our 3 stripes. We can press C and look around. Okay, let's go back to our active camera by pressing ESC as escape. So now what you want to do on our working on our custom view, we want to duplicate this layer. So we can simply select the layer, Ctrl D, and now we want to rotate this element. So we press R, and then we can rotate around the y-axis. But here we face the problem. The rotation axis is in the middle of our animation, whereas what we want to do, if we go back to our animation, is to have the two pre-cones to touch each other at the edges. So how can we do that? Let's go back to our main composition stripes. So let's go back to our active camera, and here we can change the position of the anchor points. So if we use this tool, pan behind anchor points, click on it, and now we can select the anchor points and simply drag it here. You can hold shift to move, and then we place it at the very beginning of our shapes. So now we can go back to the 3D space view. We can select, duplicate the layer, and we can rotate around the y-axis. There we go. If we hold shift, we move on 45 degrees, or we can simply define here the angle 90. Now we can move our elements. We press E, and now we can move here. We can zoom in, pressing C. We can zoom in. We can rotate around to make sure that it's touching perfectly. We need to change the position. So we can P and change the Z. Make sure that they're touching more or less. Okay, let's move around. Seems to be about right. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit. And okay, let's see the animation. Alright, what we want to do though is to have the second piece of animation to start right after we have our first strip here finishing this movement. So this frame here. So we can simply drag the timeline And in order to make sure that we are touching the keyframe here, we can hold shift. So now we are uh, perfectly touching uh, the timeline, which seems to be here. Press 0 and see. Very good. They are not actually touching very well each other. That bothers me. Let's try to fix that quickly. Zoom in. You can select and then change the position just a little. Should be all right. Looking good. Very good. Let's run the animation. It's working well. So now we can do the same, exactly the same thing for the other direction. So we can copy this pre-comp here, Control E. We can rotate around the y-axis of 90 degree, or better minus 90 if you want to go to the other direction. Then we can change the position axis. We can zoom in here to be more precise. Alright, should be about right. What we are just missing is the starting point of this animation. So we have to make sure to be at the end of the first one. Okay. And now we can simply drag the timeline, finish here, one more frame, frame. Okay, should be about right. Let's extend our working area, press 0 and see if they're working well. Alright, it's looking good. So last few things we can adjust are first we can set the camera, and then because now we are in the custom view camera, but our actual camera is this one. So we can create a new camera that set the point of view and animate this camera as well. So we can go to layer, new camera. Let's make it this time 50 millimeter, more extreme camera. And now let's go back to our initial keyframe. First, let's define a point of view. Then we can go back to the keyframe. Now we can see all these three stripes here. See, then we can pan a little bit. Let's see how it looks. So now we see three stripes. Maybe we can pan a little bit down. Alright, very good here. So this could be our first position for the camera. So we can press P and toggle the stopwatch. Now we can move to the end of our animation. Let's move the position of the camera. We can zoom out a bit and rotate as well, and let's actually rotate this other side and rotate back. And alright, something like that. Let's see. Alright, looks good. We can delay a little bit here. Very good. Let's press 0. I think there is one frame more here in the movement from. Yeah, sorry. Maybe here. Let's see. Now it's loading the frames. A little bit. Alright, should be about right. One more thing we can add is the light. So we can add some light effects by adding a layer, new, light, and here we can select which kind of light we want. Let's use a point light first. Point. We can move this light in space. Here it's fine. Maybe it's a bit more in the middle. And then we see very dark areas, so we can add layer new light again, some more ambient light. Okay, now it's definitely too bright. You can change the options of the light here and just light the intensity. So let's lower intensity to something like that. Let's run the preview quickly. Very good. And then if we go back to our animation here, there's also something that makes sometimes the animations look a little bit better. Which is this kind of vignette effect. See the corners are a bit darker than the scene, so we can quickly add this effect by creating a new layer, new solid, make composition sides, and we want this solid to be dark. Now to this solid we want to create a matte. So we select shape here. Instead of a rectangle we want an ellipse, and in order to make it as big as our composition size we can double click the ellipse. Now in the mask options, instead of adding we want to subtract. Then we can play with the mask options, particularly with the feeder and with the expansion as well. You can make it bigger, and also with the opacity. You can make it a little bit more transparent. Maybe now it's too white. Alright, should be good now. Okay, let's run the frame preview. And here is our animation. So as you can see, working through the space could be very effective. Before we have seen an example with photos. In this case, shapes. In one of the next tutorials, we are going to see how we can animate vector files from Illustrator, both in 2D and in 3D, and how we can combine these animations with also the movement of camera, like we are seeing now. Thank you guys, and then see you next time.